Now, 1st of May each year is a day set in the international calendar to celebrate International Workers' Day, also known as Labor Day in some countries, and often referred to as May Day. It is a celebration of laborers and the working classes that is promoted by the international labor movement. Today's commemoration of International Labor Day in South Africa falls against the backdrop of a crippling high unemployment rate, which is now at a staggering economy. Many workers say they have nothing to celebrate as black working class in the country continue to struggle. Now, this morning, South African Federation of Trade Unions national spokesperson Trevor Shaku joins me on the news for more on this. Thank you so much, Trevor, for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, is celebrating Workers' Day still significant to many workers out there in South Africa?
Can you repeat?
So I said the celebration of Workers' Day, is it meaningful? Is it something that others or people should consider significant, most especially for workers in South Africa?
Yes, today there will be commemorations of the Workers' Day across the country from various federations of trade unions and various trade unions which are independent. Specifically for us as the South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAFTU, which is the second biggest trade union federation in the country, we are commemorating May Day under the theme celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Durban strikes of 1973. In 1973 would have been one of the turning points. In fact, the whole of the 1970 as a decade was a turning point in the history of this country, especially in particular a reference to the history of the working class. Because up until then, historians would have classified the period preceding 1970, the 1960s, as the political vacuum or a lull. And because of the banning of the liberation struggles in the country, liberation movement rather, in the country, the PAC and the ANC. And in the 70s, towards the late 60s and the early 70s, two key movements emerged. The first one was the Black Consciousness Movement, and the second one was the Workers' Movement, which, with its revival of the organized labor, was able to fight for key rights of workers and freedoms. In particular, because until then, the workers had not been allowed, the black workers had not been allowed to form trade unions of their own. So one of the demands, in addition to wage demands and demands for improvement of working conditions, one of those demands was for the black workers to be able to be allowed to form trade unions. And indeed, the Way Commission was instituted in 1979. It reached a decision that these trade unions must be allowed. And indeed, one of the first federations to exist legally was for SATU. So for us, the trade union, the Workers' Day today is a reflection of those struggles, but also an opportunity for us to reflect on how far have we come since then, since 1973, but also since 1994. Have we made progress or have we regressed? And what are the challenges that the labor movement is facing in addressing the catastrophic conditions, socio-economic conditions that workers are facing in the country?
Yes, and that actually brings me to my next question, Trevor. Judging by what has happened since the inception of Cyril Ramaphosa to date, would you say that his administration has treated the workers well? Would you say that he has listened to the agitations of the workers? Would you say that he has met a considerable amount of the complaints that the workers have tabled before him? Would you say that his administration has, in terms of responsibility being delivered as a government, would you say that it has done well in meeting the plights of South African workers?
Absolutely not. The administration of Cyril Ramaphosa, and quite ironically, but also shamefully, is that it has actually worked against the socio-economic gains which workers would have fought over the years, over the years. And the reason I'm saying it's ironic and shameful is because Cyril Ramaphosa himself is the inaugural Secretary General of the NUM. And NUM was the National Union of Mine Workers, one of the first trade unions which would have paved the way for our tradition in this country, which was formed in the 1980s. So this person is an inaugural general secretary of that union, and today is the one who is leading the fight, the treacherous butchering of workers' conditions. We have seen under his rule, and even the preceding administration of Jacob Zuma, the unemployment rising to more than 45% in the last year. Today, at least, we're sitting with unemployment in the country sitting at 42%. That is over 11 million of the people who are in the labor force. But secondly, you have 75% of the workforce in this country who are earning less than 5,800. And that is a meager income if you look at the rising costs of living. We've seen Ramaphosa's administration presiding over an austerity budget, that is government budget cuts, which have actually collapsed and led to the decline of various departments of government, including local government and state-owned enterprises, where we've seen retrenchments through understaffing, the reduction in the headcount in the public service. We've seen at the same time the budgets for infrastructure of the public institutions and departments also being cut, and that has affected the way workers, for instance, work in those particular institutions. But also it is disadvantaging the beneficiaries of public service goods and services, because at the end of the day, it is not just about workers in the public service, but those workers are there to deliver services and to produce goods on behalf of the overwhelming majority of the population of this country, 90% of whom rely on public services. So indeed, there is no advances which would have been made under Ramaphosa's administration if we were to reflect honestly.
All right, so finally, for the unions, how would you also describe the way they have actualized the thoughts and demands of the workers? Would you say that they've done well? And how do you think the rights of the workers can be protected and they are prioritized in the scheme of things? Just in about a minute, please.
I didn't hear the last part.
So I said that I'd like you to also describe how the unions, the leaders of the unions in South Africa have actually channeled the complaints and actualized the demands and the plights of the workers. How have they also fared in championing the cause of the workers? And finally, how do you think the rights of the workers can be protected and they can be prioritized in the scheme of things?
Okay, though I struggle to hear you, but let me attempt to answer. I hope I have heard you properly. But we think that one of the key tasks and one of the key items that ought to be discussed in the May is the program on how to advance the socio-economic interests of workers forward, but also how to protect the gains which have already been made, especially on the part of the legalese, because we have made advances in terms of labor laws, which are protecting workers' rights in this country. Of course, we are still falling behind insofar as socio-economic interests are concerned. So we're going to have to, in this May Day, ensure that we come up with a program, first and foremost, of ensuring that we are going to unite various stratas of the working class to unite to fight for the socio-economic interests of workers in general, not just employed workers, but even unemployed workers, even students, because these are the different stratas of the working class who form 90% of South Africa's population. Two, we're going to have to look at internally, because there are challenges and conflicts within the trade union movement itself that are hindering it from achieving sustained gains, sustained struggle in the country. Okay. We're going to have to look internally and introspect as to how far have we gone with the principles of worker control, worker democracy.
All right, thank you so much, Trevor, and we say Happy Workers' Day to you and every other worker in South Africa.
Thank you very much.